Good morning, people of the internet. You are listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Point Blank, 1 minute at a time. I'm your co-host, Hugh David.
And I'm Dev Sodiger. And on today's show, we're going to be looking at minute 6. Joining us on today's show, we have Billy Holku, self-professed generic nerd. Welcome, Billy.
Hey, thank you very much for letting me on the show. It's a real honour.
Thank you. It's a great honor to have you on, Billy. It really is. So people who don't know you and are still learning who we are, episode 1, Dev and I have explained our backgrounds and how we came to be doing this podcast. But Billy, you and I used to be part of a pub meet group, effectively, I guess. The Sons of Dean Martin, as Giles used to call it. And we used to also hang out at the same film nights at the Duke Mitchell.
Duke Mitchell, yeah, Duke that's Mitchell. Great. Yeah, awesome times.
Yeah. Those guys have really gone on to a lot now because they're part of actual festivals, aren't they? Actual film festivals.
Oh yeah. Oh, excellent. Yeah. I mean, Evrim's all traveling the world.
Well, he's directing and producing now, isn't he?
Oh yeah,
crazy
course, yeah,
man.
Definitely.
Those guys have all gone to a lot. So you and I are. So we know all these other people, and we're all film fans, and we all worked somewhere or another in the film business. You've got an interesting association with the film business, haven't you?
Yeah. So I started off learning media and TV just like anybody else in college.
Right.
First off, initially I wanted to be an artist, doing drawings, etc. Then I led myself into photography by accident, and I just kind of fell in love that way. But yeah, and then as I kind of have my love of photography carry on, I then got into more films and TV, etc. I then started to decide, well, I'm going to go into media. Finished college, all that kind of stuff, and I thought I'm going to go to try and get into the film business. So in about '99, I decided to go back to Hong Kong, where I kind of went, initially when I was a child, but I mostly grew up in UK. And yeah, I started working in film productions there, as a storyboard artist and sometimes stuntman and sometimes actor. Really, and it was interesting experiences there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're one of those rare people who's seen the inside of the Hong Kong film business. Which is an interesting business in and of itself, and so there's a lot of reality I find you bring to film discussions about grounding things and saying, well, actually, they probably did this, and it's not that special, or it's not the dreamland, the dream factory we think of.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, and you and I both were peripherally involved in an extra for Arrow's Bruce Lee box set last year.
Yes, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and that's an absolutely dream come true to be part of some form of Bruce Lee legacy, especially as a lifelong martial artist as well. So yeah, it's a good tickety box.
I was inspired because I can see it behind you over your shoulder.
Yes? No idea what you're about.
Yeah, no, so Dev, what happened was one of our mutual friends works at Arrow Films, and he in restoration and mastering, all that stuff. And he had a genius idea for a little bit of promotional material. So he asked Billy to choreograph a short film for the martial arts, and he asked me to find him somebody, if I knew somebody who could be a Bruce Lee stand-in, which I happen to know. So that all worked out. So they ended up shooting a kind of, Bruce Lee clone style short film to go on to be used for promotion and go on the box set as well. So yeah, that's
that's super cool.
It's just a bit crazy. These things keep happening to us now. So let's get back to Grosse Point Blank. So Billy, first things first, how did you come to Grosse Point Blank as a film?
How did I come across it?
Yeah, when did you first see it?
You know what? I probably watched it on. I want to say VHS. I'm not quite sure. I lived right opposite a video store rental store, and I used to when I had a shop right opposite it. And on my down times, I used to just go in there every day, pretty much, just renting out films, just like anybody else, really. And yeah, I just thought I pointed it out and thought, oh, this looked a little bit of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always looking for action films. I'm also looking for rom-coms as well. Oddly enough, there's a strange combination. I think that's a little bit from my Hong Kong film background
Yeah.
as well. It's like growing up, a lot of Hong Kong films are a mix of rom-coms and action. So it kind of fit together, really.
And also in Hong Kong, you get action directors who direct rom-coms as well. I mean, Johnny To, Ringo
Yes.
Lam, they've both done that.
Yes, Johnny To is a very strange kind of a repertoire, CV, etc. But Johnny To especially, yes.
Look, isn't there a Ringo Lam one called Looking for Mr. Right? I think. Which I think it's on one of my shelves over there. But anyway, I mean, you and you're literally one of the few guys I talk to about rom-coms. It's kind of sad, really, because I'd like to be able to talk to you more. I think more guys should watch and appreciate what rom-coms do.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm walking around. I'm quite a kind of big guy. Like I'm a lifelong martial artist, like tattooed and all that kind of stuff. And everyone goes, "Oh wow, so you're really into action films?" I am. I'm also very much into my rom-coms.
Yeah, absolutely. And Grosse Point Blank is interesting precisely because it feels like it blends both action and rom-coms.
Yes, definitely. Oh, yeah. I mean, I could easily watch a Johnny To actioner, all one of his rom-coms like Needing You, and then go straight to Grosse Point Blank, and it will just flow perfectly.
It does
as a part of a night.
It does, and while the minutes we're talking about don't focus particularly on action, at some point I think we'll need to talk to you about the Hong Kong influence on the film, because there's a clear Hong Kong influence on the film.
Oh yes,
very much so.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. So coming back to the minute then, Dev, we're on minute 6. And this is following on from the last episode where we were talking with Neil McKay of the Man with the Music Minute podcast about Dan Aykroyd's character Grocer and his conversation with Martin Q. Blank, John Cusack's character.
Yes, and it's the same conversation throughout this entire minute as the last minute. It sees Grocer kind of increasingly desperate in his efforts to kind of capture Martin Blank as part of his newborn union members club, whatever you want to call it. And I think also, shows more and more of that slightly unhinged nature of Grocer as we progress through this minute, getting up to the point of this bing, 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 bang popcorn piece, which I'm not entirely sure I get what he's alluding to there, whether it's another reference to the Boudreaux debacle in Oregon, or if it's some other reference that I've just never quite connected up.
Well, so this is something interesting. Last episode, Billy, what we were discussing with our guest at the time was this idea that this entire conversation between these two guys who are both clearly ex-military, both killers, both assassins, seems to be full of stuff that is either jargon-based or based on real-world stuff, but real-world stuff that may not be common knowledge to the American movie-going audience, right? There's a reference to the Stasi, which is the East German Secret Service. They talk about things that they're going at the arms dealing in Burma. There's a reference to tanks that, unless you are if you're not a tank nerd, you don't know that T-34s are a Russian tank model, classical model, etc., and so forth and so on. And so we were discussing whether or not, what's the point of having dialogue that the audience doesn't understand? But what was your experience of this conversation? Were you like, well, I know some bits and I don't know others, or what did you get from the conversation between Dan Aykroyd's Grocer and Martin Hugh Blank?
Well, I kind of saw that like a Dan Aykroyd's character, also as just what Dev was saying, he is this increasingly unhinged kind of character coming towards it. But yeah, I mean, he's but as we were saying, like with regards to whole bing bang bang popcorn, it could be just that it's just one of those weird catchphrases that he just tends to have. He's such a quotable character, especially like nearer to the end as well. Workers of the world unite. As he's like banging away, and so it's just the way I think it's just the way he is, like character wise. But yeah, it did when I first watched it, I was lost in regards to what models of what you were saying, the tank. I've actually just learned just now from you. It's a Russian tank. Like, 20 odd years later, I was like, yeah, what's he on
Hey,
about?
I wouldn't have known until 2 years ago. So there you go.
Yeah, but it's a whole setup of their relationship and the dynamic. It's like Grocer wanting Blank to come in with him, and Blank is just flat out refusing. Goes, oh yeah, because we used to work together. Oh, remember that guy from Burma? You were a colonel at the army, so Grocer is giving us a background of who he is, of what sort of who Blank is, and why he's so good at his job, or who potentially, just feeding us that information, and we just kind of learning. Well, it's a building block, a starting of a building block as to learn as to who he is later on.
Yeah, I mean the popcorn thing is the clearest example of foreshadowing. But whatever it is, Martin knows this is something Grocer says, because when Grocer goes boop with his hands and his mouth, he doesn't say the catchphrase. It's Martin who says the catchphrase to him. And you're kind of like, okay, so whatever this is between them, they know. It's something they know they have between them. And it'll come back at the very end of the film beautifully. And I sometimes wonder if that was literally the entire point of it, was just to set up the end, rather than actually having any real kind of purpose at this point. And in fact, I mean, because every time I remember the film, I remember at the end. I always forget that they set it up at the beginning. So the other thing I like about it is about this minute as well is the way they leave it, the way the conversation ends. They're trying to make it casual and cool and calm, and except they both seem but they're both full of emotion, right? They're quite, Gross is carrying a lot of emotion. He's kind of the bit where he's like, hey, yeah, no, it's good. Nice to see you again. You're looking good, And you're like, what? You two are like holding your guns there. Like, what is this, man? And then Martin's like, yeah, drive safe. And the first thing Grocer does is drive really unsafely.
just speeds off in that weird Buick car.
The way he reverses it as well, and you just like, literally like the way Aykroyd used to drive in the Blues Brothers, isn't it? But it is kind of it's such an odd sequence.
But it is very much framing the end of the movie, and it's setting up the dynamic between these two quite effectively, even if you don't follow the language. It's very much Dan Aykroyd positing that he's kind of the bigger man. He's the father figure, right, as is literally called on in this, right? And then the rest of the movie, you see Dan Aykroyd almost kind of like babysitting, sitting on, like watching from a distance this, kid, I guess, as he thinks of him. That
he always calls him kid. Hey, kid.
Yeah. And it kind of has those harmonics of like father and teenage son. In a lot of it, and then of course there's almost this entire conversation is reproduced at the end of the film as Dan Aykroyd falls back once again into trying to recruit Martin, trying to get them to both go upstairs and cap Daddy. Like it is, this scene is just, I think, in almost in its entirety setting up for the end of the movie.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect of that I think is quite enjoyable is when, just before he gets in the car, Grocer turns to him and says, "Hey, you're heading to the Midwest," and you're like, "Does he know? Like, does he know? Like, is he part of what's setting up Martin? Like." Because we already so in the last couple of episodes we've been discussing the first hit, and whether or not who was hired first to do what, right? And you know the film, Billy. So you know that there's a messenger who gets shot by Martin, which gets the bodyguards of whoever it is to shoot the messenger guy, but then Grocer comes out from behind, kills everybody.
Yeah.
And we were trying to work out who hired who. Like, did somebody hire Grocer to do the hit? Somebody else hire Martin to stop the hit, at which point Grocer hires the messenger guy to distract Martin. Or is it some other, like...
I kind of have the theory of that all the kind of hitmen have an idea of who's doing what.
Okay.
There's like this. So I have a feeling that it's somebody has hired blank to do the job, but Grocer has heard about the job and thinking, oh, I could use this as an opportunity to possibly, hire blank into this. So
go on.
Yeah, so he comes in. So he comes in. He kills the guy. He botches blank's job, and then say, hey, you know what? Things like this would completely be avoidable if you come and join my union.
So it's that classic thing of I just screwed up your hit for you.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So join me.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense as well. I love that. That would also explain why he's waiting behind them, to watch what happens. And he only steps in once he's like, yeah, okay, Martin's job is done. Because I also what I've been wondering as we research this podcast is I keep wondering if Martin gets paid or not for that job. Because he does the job, and you can hear at one point I think he's arguing with Marcella about that, because I think she's having to deal with the client, and I think he's saying, no, I did the job. There's more bodies, but the client never specified how many bodies, so just leave it, all right? And
I was uncertain about that for the longest time as well, and I think he does get paid for that initial job. It's the next job that he doesn't get paid for and has to do the make good on.
Yes.
Because the next job is the one that goes wrong and he has no out.
Yes.
Really.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. This one he's got.
It's supposed to be a heart attack.
Yeah. It's such a great line. We'll come to that in a minute.
Supposed to die in his sleep.
Yeah. I mean, but before we get there, there's also the other thing in this minute I like, as we move it from this minute into minute 7, is his conversation with Marcella, played by Joan Cusack. Because again, they use the location interestingly. I was saying last week about how they frame this conversation of these two guys away from the city and the city's in the background. This is a perfect widescreen composition with LA in the background, like recognizably LA, the car gleaming, and then Martin sitting there. And it could come from any number of films, but it's so but at the same time it's perfectly modern because he's 97 and he's got a cell phone, which is not that common at the time, and then he's also got a fax in his car. I was like, a fax machine in the car? Who the hell has a fax machine in the car? But he has a fax machine in the car, and it prints in color. Like, dude, who is this guy? Yeah, right? And I was just like, wait a minute, this is 97. How high-tech is this guy? But it's all part of the cool. Yeah. It's all part of the cool. He's LA chic. He's business chic. He's it's just really...
Yeah, we should explore that more in the next minute.
I think so.
As well,
No, exactly. I just wanted to introduce it now because we see it that shot and then it rolls into the next minute at that point, because we're going to be talking more about the arguments from Marcella, I think.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That was it. That was minute 6 or 6, 5. Losing track. 6.
This was minute 6 of the Grosse Point Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers and co-producers, Dev Sodiger and Hugh David.
Today's guest was Billy Holku, self-professed generic nerd. You can find him on Instagram. Where, Billy, can they find you?
At Dim Sum Discussions Instagram, where it's a lot of food pics.
Yeah, those are good food pics, man. And you can find us at all good podcast players, as well as on YouTube, X, and Spotify at Debi Radio, DEBI Radio, as well as on our website, debiradio.com. And for all of those, once again, it's DEBI Radio.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't a moment, it was a feeling of mood.